how he invested in real estate and built a massive portfolio. But it all started when he was 15. He bought a martial arts studio with a loan from his parents.
It makes sense, unfortunately, for the way that America is trending with the unaffordability and trying to create affordable housing for people.
I mean, we all know we had someone at some stage believe in us. And it's such a great reminder for us to believe in other people.
The well-off kids are actually paying for the parent to stay in there, and it's almost like literally assisted living, right? Versus putting someone in a nursing home. But they talked about very specific properties. It has to be 6 bedrooms plus.
Like a transaction coordinator, somebody can handle the closings and stuff. He's like, I might have to pay $50,000-$60,000 if they're going to actually like go out and help me find deals.
And because we live in a social media world where scaling is just the thing to do. And we were kind of going back and forth on how
if someone wants to go take action and maybe potentially try this or dive deeper into their research. So give us an idea of how to manage this thing.
What type of renovations and furnishing and everything did you have to do in terms of cost to set up a property?
If you have the systems, I'd say if you've never managed anything in your life ever before, maybe you shouldn't just dive into it because it's got nuances and systems to figure out.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Wealth Juice podcast. As always, it's your boys Ryan and Corey here with another episode for you. Today we had special guest Sam Wegert on the show. He specializes in a real estate investing strategy called co-living, where it's essentially renting by the room. Now, when I originally heard of this or thought of this specific niche, I thought about back in college when you rent out a home and there'd be 4 rooms in there and you'd have 3 of your friends renting out the other room and you rent a room, right? And you're all on a lease together. But Sam does this on a much bigger scale. And I think one of the coolest parts about Sam's story, we'll get into how he invested in real estate and built a massive portfolio, but it all started when he was 15. He bought a martial arts studio with a loan from his parents, and really became an entrepreneur before 16, which is crazy. So he's built multiple businesses, has scaled them, and just has an interesting mind for a young 34-year-old guy, a 33-year-old guy, I should say. And Corey and I, it's funny, like age is only a number, right? We're like, wow, we really look up to this guy. We had a bunch of conversations with him before he came on the show. And then we asked him today how old he was. And we're like, damn, he's our age, which is crazy. And it's so cool to just run in circles with people that are absolutely killing it in their space, and just a fun episode.
Yeah, Sam's a one-of-a-kind dude. He's in GoBundance, which is the organization that Ryan and I are like striving to be a part of. He has over 300 co-living beds. He has, he scaled his martial arts studio to 8 brick and mortar locations, and he had 20,000 students in a bunch of different states. And it's just funny how he parlayed the entrepreneurial mindset of martial arts and then into the real estate. And the co-living is such a unique, I guess, mechanism to grow your portfolio. You can take a property that would rent out to a family that would rent for $2,700 and turn it into $8,500 a month machine that prints money, while also giving people affordable living and having people pay $800, $900 a month to live there. And it kind of makes sense. It makes sense, unfortunately, for the way that America is trending with the unaffordability and trying to create affordable housing for people. It's a way for a win-win where people that are working solid jobs that have good but not amazing jobs. They can pay X amount to live and live in a nice place. I mean, you should listen to Sam and how he talks about how he furnishes the place for them and puts pool tables in and just amenities to make people feel good about where they live. But you live your own room, but you share common areas. And I for people that are listening, this is something that you can do. And I'm talking to everyone. You can do this. You can find areas that will support this, and they're all throughout the United States. And Sam mentioned he could find properties today in San Diego that make sense. And I find that fascinating because everyone's always looking for the new niche and what they should do in real estate. And co-living is, like, for me, the top of the list of what people should be looking at.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's such an interesting blend. I talked about this on the show between a long-term rental strategy and then short-term rental strategy, right? Because you're furnishing a common space and you're really kind of going in like with an architect mindset and just like, how can we construct this place to make it, comfortable for 8+ people? So let's bring the master on. And without further ado, let's welcome Sam. Sam, officially welcome to the Wealth Juice podcast. We are so excited to have you on the show today, man. I know we were talking a lot pre-recording. We've had a couple conversations, but seems like cut from the same cloth, running similar circles, just super excited, high vibes, high energy, thrilled to have you on the show. So thanks for joining us.
Dude, you got it. I'm super excited to be on. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Corey. And yeah, guys, let's get into it. I'm excited.
Let's do it, man. So you have a very interesting story, and I want to take it back all the way. Let's talk to 15-year-old Sam here. This is when you first purchased your first martial arts studio and became an entrepreneur. And I think it's interesting for most people, they become entrepreneurs probably post 20, right? Maybe even 30. And for you to dial it all the way back to 15, we looked at a timeline of just all the things you've accomplished. And we're like, wow, wait, were you really 15 when you started this thing? So take us back there. How did this thing come to be? And then, we'll go through your journey, as the episode progresses.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I think anything anybody accomplishes in life is not on their own, right? So like, as much as I want to say, yes, this was great, and I was 15 and I bought this martial arts school, which was my first foray into entrepreneurship. I mean, we all know we had someone at some stage believe in us. And it's such a great reminder for us to believe in other people, because when I was 13, my mom put me in martial arts, and my martial arts instructor came alongside of me and basically said like, man, you've got potential. You're a good martial artist. And I was kind of in the right place at the right time, because my instructor wanted to get out of the business. And so he was looking for someone to sell the school to. And he hired this consultant to come in, and the consultant walked in and said, that's your guy. And I don't know what he saw in me, but he just had a sense of feeling, and he believed in me. To the point to where he was like, you're going to run this school. Like, you will run this. And it was a small town. He probably had 120 students or something like that. But his name was Master Lawrence Arthur. And man, he became my mentor over the next 5 to 7 years, probably longer than that, maybe 7 or 8 years, and just built me up, taught me a business model, taught me how to, actually, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I remember one of my first meetings with him. He walks in, he slaps this 28-page script down on the table. Like, I'm talking full 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper script, and says, if you memorize this, and it was the script for how to enroll someone in a martial arts program. He says, if you memorize this, I will make you a millionaire. And I was like, 14, 15 at this time. I'm like, sure, I'll memorize it. I memorized 28 pages. People come in, but he gave me a business model. He gave me a proven system. Think of like a franchise model. And without that, I would not be here today, guys. So big shout out to him. Big shout out to my martial arts mentors. Big shout out to my parents who gave me a loan and also believed in me. I come from this big family. My parents were not wealthy. It wasn't like they had tens of thousands of dollars sitting around. They had 8 kids. So it was like, I was one of 8. Like, they had a lot of other things to worry about, a lot of other kids to handle. And, but they really saw something in me. They loaned me this 15 grand. It was $15,000. I think it was actually 20, and I worked off 5, like 20 grand to buy this little martial arts school. Obviously there was no real estate. It was a leased building. Right. And man, I just set out to prove to the world that I could be somebody. Right. Like, that was my vibe, man, was like, I gotta show these people. Mainly, like, I had this group of friends that would always, I thought I could impress my friends if I made more money than them, but which, by the way, anybody listening to this, it's not exactly how it works. Like, your friends actually end up hating you. I feel like when you start rubbing in your face, you make more money than them. But for whatever reason, in the mind of a 13-year-old, I thought, what can I do to impress my friends? I was always like the runt of the group. I was like a little socially awkward. So I was like, if I could just like make more money than them, and then I'll impress them, and then I'll be somebody, I'll get that attention. Maybe I didn't get because I was one of 8. Who knows, right? We can go into the psychology of it if you want to. But yeah, I mean, I can kind of take that wherever you want to go. But that was really my first foray. I'll share this one little story. I'm sure some people can relate when they first started their entrepreneurial journey. Some guy comes into the martial arts school to buy like a headgear, like a helmet. We would wear this sparring gear. And I said, okay, how do you want to pay for that? It was like $80, like a headgear and a face shield. And this was like the day after I owned the school. And he goes, I'm just going to pay cash. And so keep in mind, I'm used to making like $15 an hour before this story I'm telling you. So he throws down like $80 in cash on the thing, and I just take it. I give him the helmet. I had it in stock, right? And at the time, I didn't report cash to taxes. I just like pocketed the cash, right? So I stick it in my pocket, and I sat back in my chair. I just remember like 80 divided by 15. Like, I just like 6 hours, whatever the math is on that, 6, 7 hours. I was like, if this is entrepreneurship, like, I'm effing in. Like, I'm in. Let's go. Put in my, and there was just like this light bulb moment, and I was off to the races after that.
Totally, man. It's interesting how
any
many
IRS agents listening, I'm sure I went back and reported that.
I'm sure you've made up for that, dude, in overtime. Trust me, only $80.
Yeah, you reported it, and we have a bunch of IRS agents listening, so just so you know, Sam reported it. But so it's interesting how many stories start out with just kind of just like people not knowing anything, not knowing what to do,
Yeah.
not knowing how to do it, and just kind of stumbling into it. And it's that action taking mentality that kind of gets people set off and going in the right direction. I want to talk about, before we get into the co-living and the real estate and how you expanded into the GoBundance, you know, this martial arts business turned into 6 brick and mortar locations, you know, 1,500 students, 20,000 students, you know, over 25 states and provinces in Canada. I mean, how did you scale it? Like what was was that part of your goal? Did you set out to scale this thing? Because it's became a pretty massive business for you.
Yeah. So many lessons, man, from scale, that I could share. I mean, I'm just thinking the lessons. How did I scale it? I do believe I want to circle back around to something you ended, and then I will answer that question. One of my mentors always says, you made me think of it, I wrote it down when you said that, is like how people start and they don't really know everything. And they just take action to kind of figure it out. Is like, I believe that if you're ever wondering what to do in any situation, massive action is the cure all. And that's not me. It's not a quote from me, but that's like what I believe. It's like, so it's like you throw enough stuff at the wall, something's going to work. Right. And so people take a little bit of action usually, and they don't get the result, and they go down the rabbit hole of saying, well, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. Right. But massive action, figuring something else, definitely the cure all in those situations. But yeah, man, when we circle back around to scaling, you know, what's interesting, and I'm just going to say this because I do believe people need to hear this. I was on a podcast yesterday with a guy who has built a mega team. He has the 299th biggest residential real estate sales team out of 100,000 teams. So he's top, right? And he said, Sam, I scaled a big team, but a lot of people scale because of ego. And because we live in a social media world where scaling is just the thing to do. And we were kind of going back and forth on how we kind of wish in some ways we hadn't scaled. Because like we probably would be making, I've got a buddy who runs one martial arts school, crushes it, and makes more money than I ever did with 8. I think we ended up having 8 at one point in time, right? And an online program, and we had a nonprofit, we had all this infrastructure, right? So I'll share some of the, so one of the lessons I learned from scaling was a lot of times an inch wide and a mile deep is a better strategy if you can put your ego aside and say net matters. Ultimately, what matters is how much money am I taking away from this thing, right? And instead, we want to build these big organizations with tons of overhead. And it was just kind of a back and forth. So I'm very like attuned to this conversation because I just had it yesterday with this guy who also has built a big team and was like, look, everybody shouldn't build a big team. But I decided to scale because I had some ego and I wanted to like make a name for myself in the martial arts world. And I think I did that. I was close to the top guys in this space, you know, by the time I exited that business. And I scaled it with a really simple strategy. I was the starter guy. I'd go in, I'd start it, and then as quickly as possible, I'd have someone try to take over everything that I would do. So my goal then, and I think this is a good goal for anybody wanting to scale, your goal is to do nothing. And that was my goal. Every martial arts school I would start, I would say, how fast can I get to a place where no meetings rely on me, no review of KPIs rely on me, no staff meetings, no hiring, no firing? How quickly in this school can I get to a place where nothing relies on me? And that was my goal. And I just did that times 7 or 8 times. Took me like a year and a half every time. And that's how that was one of my strategies to get there.
Yeah, I find that fascinating, man. I was just having this conversation. I just got back from Tampa. I was checking on my property down there, and after Hurricane Helene, I guess
I was in Tampa. I was just in Tampa for the hurricane. That's crazy.
Really? Yeah, I was down there to watch my Eagles get smacked by the Bucks. That was fun. But I was down there for a couple of reasons. It turned into like a hurricane relief mission. I was. This podcast is probably not going to come out until maybe November, December, so it might not be as relevant. But I was having a conversation with, one of my good friends and sort of a mentor, but just like somebody who Ryan and I are going to do some deals with down in Tampa. And he's built a business where he flips properties and he does wholesaling. And he was telling me about how, he made $25K today on a wholesale deal. And I kind of we had like a heart to heart a little bit about like, hey, so like, where do you want to get to? And the conversation came up about scale, similar to what you were saying. And he's like, yeah, I think my next step is to hire, like a transaction coordinator, somebody can handle the closings and stuff. And he's like, I might have to pay $50,000, $60,000 if they're going to actually like go out and help me find deals. And I'm like, would that make you happier? Is the scaling aspect going to make you in a better financial position, or is it just going to bring you more revenue? Like, what is the purpose of hiring this person? And we just got into a great conversation because he runs an operation that works really, really well already. So a lot of people have questions about like where to go next in terms of scaling. So I don't really have a question off of that. I just wanted to make sure that like I connected the dots with like scale only if it makes sense for you to get yourself out and do less work. And I think it's just a important conversation when you think about the trajectory of where you want your business to go.
Yeah. And usually your first hire is, and again, this came up in my podcast yesterday. In the first hire, you are buying back your time so that you can go make more money. Because usually you are the producer at the beginning, right? So usually that first hire, and again, this is this comes from Keller Williams. They've created a model for their agents, but it applies to almost anything. It's like, hey, you're the producer usually at the beginning. And instead of going out and hiring that big producer, like that's probably not your next hire. You probably can't afford that, but you can go hire an assistant, someone to buy back your time. So now you can produce more deals and have more revenue to continue to build the company. But there is a distinction I'll share really quickly with people on scale, and we can kind of move on from this if you want to. But I think it starts with you doing it. So there's I, we, and then you do it. So it goes like this. It goes first, you start any business. It's like, I do it. I do the sales. I wash the dishes. I do everything. I'm the chef. I'm the cook. I'm the bottle washer, right? Chef and cook are the same thing, but whatever. You guys get the idea.
I got it.
And then it's like, we do it, right? And then it's like, hey, you and me, we're teaming up. There's collaboration. We're working this together. And you've got to get through that we do it stage and really collaborate with your team and really train your team. And that's a hard part. I'm still there in some of my businesses right now where it's like, look, I solo work really well, but the we thing is just hard for me sometimes. I'm just trying to be transparent. And then you get to a point where it's you go do it. And that's when you have the high enough level talent. You've been able to afford that talent where you can just say, here's the outcome. If you don't do it in 6 months, then you're fired. I'm finding another who. And so I think a lot of us kind of grow in that capacity.
Yeah, I think the outsourcing aspect or just put this on somebody else, like hire somebody immediately, outsource all these tasks as soon as you can. To me, I'm firmly against it, because what you're going to do is you're going to run through the gamut of how many people you try to hire. Oh, this person's not actually good. And it's like, no. It's actually you, brother, meaning me. Yeah, like it's right. Me that's not actually I don't understand this role enough to teach it to do to somebody else. Right. So I love that. And
your leadership skills aren't developed as much as enough either. You don't know how to delegate and hold accountable and set KPIs until you've gone through that we stage.
Totally. And I also find in the business that we're in, people want access to Ryan and I, and we're the face of it. So until we can train somebody to be sort of the face, we are, we're working in the business and we're working on the business. That's the good news is that Ryan and I have each other. I'm kind of in it right now. And then Rye's working on it, and it makes out for kind of a perfect blend. Although we're both, you could say I'm the visionary, he's the integrator, but we kind of play both parts. Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, man, this is good. So I want to get into your real estate and like, how did the martial arts transition to real estate? I know you have 8 short-term rentals and 115 co-living beds, and this might even be old information. You might have a lot more now, but I'm curious. Like, there's really no correlation between martial arts and real estate except scaling a business. So like, how did one become the other?
Yeah. And I think we're almost to 350 doors between what we own and manage. I think we own close to 200 and then manage another 150 more. So I think I invested in real estate mostly because it was just quote unquote the right thing to do. Some people told me that real estate makes money. I wasn't really versed in it. I just thought, okay, I need a place to live. Let me not throw all my money away in rent. Let me just buy a place, because I had a decent job, right? I was running these martial arts schools. I was doing well. I was putting some money aside. So my first little property was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath condo in Charlottesville, Virginia. And in this condo, it was like I lived in one room and I rented out the other 2 rooms because I was single. I didn't have kids. I didn't need all the other space. So that was kind of the beginning of what most people would call my house hacking journey, right? Where I'm trying to reduce my expenses as much as possible, which is a very beautiful, virtuous cycle for anybody who's house hacking or thought about house hacking, because you get to save more money, which means you get to put more money into real estate later on, but you're reducing your biggest expense in the process, which is usually housing for a lot of people. So that was really how it started. And I just did that because I needed a place to put some of the money I was making. Now, I was also like buying, I remember at that time in my life, I was buying silver and gold because my parents were big into Y2K and they thought that was going to happen. And so I invested in some other things, but I really liked my first property. It was tangible. And every month I could see that it was putting a little bit more money in my pocket. And that's a cool feeling, man. I don't care if it's $100 in passive income, that feels good. Like, Corey, you were saying you've got thousands of dollars in passive income. Like, that's nice. Like, even if it's not enough to cover all your bills, whatever, like, it's still nice. Still feels good.
Yeah. It's firmly the four figures of passive, not, monthly that is firmly the four figures, not the five, but it's interesting that how much it alleviates pressure off of you I have this money coming in, it's secure, it's backed by the asset. And not only that, but it's the principal pay down's going down, the appreciation's going up. And we tell people this all the time. If you do nothing but buy 3 to 5 properties in your life, first of all, that's more than 95% of people can do. Right. And you're going to retire a millionaire and you're going to have options. So that's why we love real estate. I think that's not our goal. We're already past that point, but it's interesting when you compare yourself to previous you, don't compare yourself to other people. But if you are thinking about just the way of the world, growing 5 doors, you know what I mean? You're doing something, you're buying, you're creating an investment vehicle for your future. So I love it, man.
Dude, it's sick. Yeah. And then this is kind of not that we want to dive into this right now, but I'd even take that a step further and say with co-living, with this model of co-living, you could have 2 homes, literally just 2. Take your 5 and reduce it to 2. But if each one of those homes is housing 6 to 8 people, now you've got 12 to 15 doors, 12 to 16 doors in 2 homes. And a co-living home can produce a couple $1,000s in cash flow if it's done correctly and it's managed well and blah, 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 right? Obviously, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, which we can talk about. But like 2, like that could get you pretty far along with 2.
Totally. Sam, can you walk us, while we're on the topic, I think we should dive in here. Can you just at a very elementary level break down co-living? We have had a couple episodes on it, but just for the people that are first time listeners here, break down co-living and then talk about a specific property like that. Like let's say 2, let's just go right into that example and really give some raw numbers to it.
Yeah, for sure. So co-living at a basic level is you take a single family home. I mean, really, you can take anything. You can take a multifamily, you can take a duplex, triplex, single, but in essence, you're looking at this concept. Co-living fully utilizes the concept of highest and best use of a square inch of real estate. So you've got, hey, if we have a housing crisis, which we do, by the way, we've got 600,000 people that'll be homeless tonight, and we need additional housing, and we aren't building fast enough in the big cities, then how do we solve that? Well, we have empty bedrooms. We have empty space. So how can I take a home that's 2,000 square feet and instead of it housing one family, what if I were to turn that into a 6-room house, which is a very typical example for us, 2,000 square foot house would turn into 6 or 7 rooms, and we rent this out by the room, right? Who's the ideal client for this? The ideal client for this is someone who's going to make less than $40,000 a year. Maybe they're making $8 to $10 to $15 to $20 an hour. Maybe they're putting your luggage on the plane for you, and they're making $15 an hour. Maybe they're serving you at Target when you go in to buy your groceries. Maybe they're your barista at Starbucks and they're making $15 to $20 an hour. Like, if you just do the math on what the after-tax dollar amount that is in their pocket after they work full-time for $15 an hour, it is not enough to afford a studio apartment plus utilities in a decent area in most of the major cities. So we've got a problem. How do we solve that problem? I believe we solve that with co-living. So co-living is nothing more than a rent-by-the-room strategy. So I'll give you an example. I bought a $410,000 house here in Charlotte. Normally, if I rented that house out on the market just to a single family, it would be about $2,500. That's about what that home, maybe 26, maybe 27, $2,500 to $2,700. We converted that home. That was a 3,300 square foot home. Now it had a big basement, walkout basement, and 2 stories. We converted it. We gave it 5 full baths. I think it had 3.5 when we bought it. So we added a half bath and we added a full bath and we made it 10 rooms. So we made it a 10. We took it from like a 4, 3.5 to a 10, 5. And then we rented it out for $8,560. So we more than tripled the rent using this strategy. And you might think that the first thought that might pop into your head is like, how the hell does that many people live together and actually get along and not murder each other? A. B, that feels like you're just packing people in there. But if I were to show you pictures of this property, it would blow your mind. It looks, we hired an Airbnb designer, like a 5-star Airbnb designer, to come in and design the common areas. We furnished the common areas. We gave it co-working spaces. We gave it a pool table. We gave it this really cool coffee bar theme, and everybody has their private bedroom. Now, some of those rooms are smaller and rent for less. Some of them are larger and have a private bathroom, rent for more. And so in essence, that's the overview of co-living. That's the power of it. Now, does that happen? I'm not on your podcast making an earnings claim of what everybody else is going to do. I'm just on here saying there's a lot of power in it from a cash flow standpoint. Now, there are a lot of nuances to getting like all the systems that have to happen for those 10 people to live like together well. There's a lot of stuff, right, that has to go on for that. But it's not. But it's less than Airbnb in some ways. Like Airbnb has a lot of nuances to it, and Airbnb figured that out, right? And so that's the process that we're in right now. But yeah,
totally. All right, I want to dive into this because this is it's so funny. We've had a bunch of different episodes recently, and we had another woman on the show, and she does RAL, residential assisted living, and it's interesting. Like they set up their own business for to maybe like a 65 plus is their target demographic, but the well-off kids are actually paying for the parent to stay in there, and it's almost like literally assisted living, right? Versus putting someone in a nursing home. But they talked about very specific properties. It has to be 6 bedrooms plus. But then the business side of it is really the daunting part. It's not so much as getting the property down pat. It's like, okay, like how do you weave the business in? So I'm thinking about this. Perfect time to talk about this episode, this episode. So just give us the structure of this. For a lot of real estate investors that are in our niche, or I should say like our audience are W-2 employees that are dipping a little bit on the side. And they're saying, okay, we have a small portfolio. Would this even work for me? I don't even know how I could manage that full time. Can I just offload this to a property manager? Or is this something you have to manage yourself?
Yeah, it depends on, the short answer is it depends on what city you're in. There are property managers that will manage this. Okay. It depends on where you are. There's big tech companies coming out. There's a company called Alcove. There's a company called PadSplit. There's a company called Homeroom. All these are tech companies trying to get into the space, fight for this space because they know it's an exploding market. To manage these properties similar to how Airbnb might manage. So these companies are trying to be the Airbnb, if you will, of co-living. So depending on if those companies are in your area, then yes, you can have someone manage it for you. I self-managed. I was working 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week running my martial arts business. And I self-managed, I think 4 properties. And then 5 was when I got an assistant to help. If you have the systems, I'd say if you've never managed anything in your life ever before, maybe you shouldn't just dive into it because it's got nuances and systems to figure out.
Yeah. I have a question specifically about that property. I'll let Rye ask. I know you have more to add on, Rye, but so maybe the how-to. You turned a property. Doesn't sound like you expanded on the square footage, right? But you turned a property that would rent for let's call it $2,700, and you 3x'd it. It was able to rent for $8,500. Sounds like 10 bedrooms, $850 a bedroom, which is an extremely affordable price, even in your market. Charlotte is becoming significantly more expensive than it used to be, but it's still a relatively decent priced area. I'm curious about what type of renovations and furnishing and everything did you have to do in terms of cost to set up a property? Because it sounds like somebody, if they're near some sort of metro and they're near, access to schools, universities, coffee shops, restaurants, maybe not like out in the burbs, but this is very doable. To turn a 3,000 square foot property into a 10 bedroom. What kind of costs were associated on your end with that?
Yeah. The biggest cost associated with converting a co-living home are if you have to add bathrooms. Like walls, doors, closets are relatively inexpensive. But if you're going to put a bathroom in, then you're going to drop 10, 15K on a full bathroom, 5 to 8K on a half bath. You're taking like a half to a full, adding like a stand-up shower, right? That's just what that might be different in California. It might be double that. I don't know. But in my area, that's about what it costs.
And you did that, like turned a 2-bed into a 5-bed or a 3-bed into a 5-bed. Is that what you did? So you added 2 or 3?
So I took a 3.5 bath and turned it into a 5 full bath. Yeah. So I added a full bath and a half bath. So between just that was probably $22,000. Now, I didn't have, like, here's the ratio that everybody needs to keep in mind. At a minimum, we've tested this across a lot of different locations. You need to have a minimum of a 3-to-1 bedroom to bath ratio. Now, when my home was done, 10-to-5, it was a 2-to-1. Now, that's because we want to be bougie. I say bougie, quotation marks. It's co-living. It's still affordable workforce housing. But like, we wanted to have a better bed to bath ratio. So could I have gotten away with 10-to-4? Yes. Yes. Could I have gotten away with 10-to-3? That's tight. Right? That's not what we recommend. So I could have probably just turned that half into a full and called it a day. But I say that, and then it would have been 10-4. But no more than 3-to-1. That's really what we recommend. You can go beyond that. Obviously, in a perfect world, everybody would have a private bath. We're building right now a 22 bedroom duplex. So like, it's like 16 on one side and what is it? Like a eight or 9 or whatever. Yeah. What's that? 20 or 6 on the other side. Yeah. Because one side has a basement and the other side doesn't. But we're building 20 full baths.
Oh, that's a diesel property. It's got to be. What's the square footage on that?
39.
Wow.
So on that property, the reason why I'm asking these questions is I'm curious, like, how doable this is for people that are not you and don't have the knowledge and base that you do. Obviously, you had to start somewhere, but is there, there's some laws in certain places where you can't have a certain amount of people in a home. Like, do you have to go through not just the conversion process, but like, is it permitting to commercial? Like, is there a township regulation? I'm curious if any of that pops up when you're doing this.
Yeah. I mean, if you're living in the home and you're hacking it, there's very few regulations that will affect this, right? It's your home, you're living in it as one of the roommates and you're there, right? When you start to do it at scale, yeah, and let me address just kind of the why behind it, and then I promise I'll answer that question. I think it's important for your listeners to know that, like, this model that I'm discussing is definitely more nuanced and has more curves that you have to figure out, hands down. Now, I believe taking a single family home that could produce $2,000 a month in cash flow, $2,500 a month in cash flow is worth it. Whereas that same normal house might lose you money or make $100 a month in cash flow. So I think I just want to say that because, yes, like, as we go through this, there's going to be some people are going to be like, oh my gosh, like that's, and it is difficult. Like, up to my first 8 properties, I was just figuring it out, like, property by property, and all these little things would come up until I just started to put all the systems in place. So I would go on record to not recommend someone do this without some support, without some systems. Maybe they do it with one property or they do it with their own property. But if you're going to do this at a real level, I do think there's support needed. I really do. Because everybody's kind of right now trying to figure the space out and crack those codes. And some people have and some people haven't. And it can be hell if it's not done correctly. I had a wholesaler bring me a deal the other day and he goes, Sam, you're going to love this property. They're already doing co-living in it. But I walk in and it's like sheets over the doors. There's not even real doors, no locks. It stinks. It's like they don't have cleaning figured out on how to, like, keep the home clean with all these people. And it's like a boarding house. That's not what I'm promoting. And I want to be really clear about that. I'm not promoting a rooming or a boarding house. So yes, regulations do come into play. There's definitely areas that have what we call we give areas a co-living friendly score. Because right now it's just nuanced. There's some states like Washington and Colorado that have come out and said it's illegal to, the governor of Colorado just recently came out and said it's illegal for any local jurisdiction to regulate the number of unrelated people living together. So, like, that's very co-living friendly. Like, that's a state law they just initiated because they're trying to solve their affordable housing issue. Now, that has not gone to all states yet. So you have to get creative. And one of the ways we get creative is by using something called the membership agreement model. It's a model where I lease my house. Like, let's just say XYZ LLC owns my house. It's a rental property. I lease it to another company, another LLC. So I have one lease on the property. I don't have multiple. I don't have 8. I don't have 7. And then that LLC that I rent it to has a ton of members. And these members are like, think fraternity club, country club, think like that $1 membership you used to have to buy if you would go into a store that served beer and wine, but they didn't have an ABC license, but you bought the $1 membership, so you're good. It's that model. So those members then get access to the house. So that is one of the ways that we play in this area. Because it's new and not everybody understands this, cities don't understand it, right? And what we're doing. So yes, you do need to look into that. If you want, you should call the local housing authority. You can call the local zoning office and just be like, how many unrelated people are allowed to live together? And you're going to get wildly different answers. Some areas regulate it, some areas don't regulate it. Some areas it's 3 if it's like a college town. Now we push those limits, even beyond those limits, using our membership model. And frankly, we're just waiting for regulations to catch up. Like more Colorados and Washingtons will come. Like Airbnb regulations are increasing. More regulations. Get out of our town, taking away housing. Co-living adds density and adds housing back into a market. So we're seeing positive regulations in almost every city. It's just taking time.
So lots to unpack here, but when I think of co-living, I'm just thinking about like college roommate situations, right? I've seen this a lot at universities. A lot of our friends did this. Like we got a really nice place and then they rented it to us by the room, right? We all got on the lease. Now I'm thinking about from the systems and processes, that's basic, right? There's let's just say 4 people living together, 4 different rooms, but there's 4 different leases. You all sign, it's over, right? So for you, you're mentioning this, it seems a little bit more complex it's almost like kind of like a syndication model, which is interesting where you all get on the same LLC. Now my thought is, okay, well, what if someone moves, is this like a 2-year lease that they have to sign into? What if someone wants to swap out? Is it just the room is basically on the LLC, or is it the person's name? Like, how do you do this? And are you continuously recycling LLCs?
You're not continuously recycling LLCs because these people they become a member of the company that is renting the home. And then they're signing an initial 12-month term. And that's usually month to month after that. And they can lose their membership rights. They can terminate their membership rights, like within certain reason, right? It's all just written out in that membership document. We can terminate it if they break a house rule or they break one of the rules of the membership agreement, or like it's like we redeem the membership token is really what technically the term is. And so and then they can come and they can go but they can become a member or not become a member. And then we can add as many members as we want to that membership, to that company.
Oh, it's a lot easier than I thought. It's interesting. Usually there's like a buyout and things like that. So that's cool. I really like that. So let's talk about the systems and processes. You don't have to give it all away, all the secret sauce, but I do want to give a little bit of a how-to if someone wants to go take action and maybe potentially try this or dive deeper into their research. So give us an idea of how to manage this thing. I'm thinking of like what people you need, what butts and what seats do you need for someone to try to self-manage this? And, maybe we already talked about the property side of things, right? I'm thinking about like the T's and C's and on the businesses, like what's allowed you to kind of steamroll this thing and make it move forward. Because if things are out of line, you mentioned the other property, things just aren't going to work.
Right. Yeah, you need to do 3 things, and I will give away the secret sauce. These are the 3 things that if you can do, you win this game. Clean, quiet, and safe. So I'll give a couple of, I could talk about each one for 40 minutes, but I will give a 2 to 3, I'll give a quick overview of every one. Clean is important. We kind of attack clean in a couple of different ways. Number 1, when they first sign up for the membership agreement, we ask them to do certain things in the house. Like an actual, I'm just going to cut the BS. It's basically a chore list. Now they can opt out of that. They have to do once every 8 weeks. Because if there's 8 people in the home, it's like they each have a week, right? And they have to now if they opt out of that and they want to pay an extra $50 a month, they can just be like, I'm not doing chores. Like that's not for me. Cool. There's an extra fee. You don't have to support with the common area cleaning, basically is what it boils down to. So they pay that, and then we get a cleaner to come in and do it for that week, and they clean the common areas for them that week, if that makes sense. So that's number 1. Now we used to only have a system like that. We called it our SWOT checklist, and everybody contributed, and it was great. But then as we scaled, we realized it's just a little harder to enforce. So then what we started doing is we have enough cash flow from the homes. We hire professional cleaners. They come in once or twice per month. They clean all the common bathrooms and they clean all the common areas. They reset everything. And then that just is what it is. Now we also do things. I mean, there's also some very strict rules like fines if someone leaves the dishes out or like silly things like that. We enforce that. We do have cameras in the inside of the property. We have cameras which I'll talk about when I get to safe. But we have cameras in the common areas, so we can just enforce and kind of help keep things safe and also enforce some of the house rules that we have. That's key, right? Trying to think of what else around clean, but those are a couple things right off the top of my head. Clean. Then you've got quiet. You've got to do a couple things to make sure that the homes are quiet, because these are not frat houses. These are not party homes. These are working professionals that need a decent, good looking, affordable place to live. So what do you do to keep it quiet? Well, first you have a headphones hours rules, right? Similar to like an Airbnb where you might walk into an Airbnb and there's like quiet hours after 10 because we're in a neighborhood. It's that same type of thing. We call them headphones hours just because we're like, you can watch TV as long as you want. I don't care. but it's got to be on headphones. And then we do not put any TVs. We furnish the common areas. We do not furnish their bedrooms. We furnish the common areas and no TVs in the common areas. That's the key. Because we don't want any source of contention. We don't want extra noise, right? And then we're not going to put anything noisy in the common area. We'll put games and like a pool table at most, but that's as noisy as we'll get. So headphones hours, you're gonna not have TVs in the common space. That kind of some of those things, as long as you really enforce that. Oh, and then overnight guests. So we'll make sure that we limit overnight guests to 5 a month. Not that we super enforce it because we're not. But if someone complains and is like, hey, John's girlfriend is over here every night of the week, we can be like, hey, buddy, like this helps keep this helps keep brand new people from walking in this thing every day. So you got to have that written in the house rules, written in the membership agreement. They initial it, they sign off, and you've set the clear expectations from the beginning, right? So these are really some of the systems you've got to have in place. So that's clean. Those are a couple things we do. Those are honestly some of the most important things we do to keep it quiet. And then safe is the third one. So we do exterior and interior cameras. Obviously, you're not allowed to have any camera in any place where there's an expectation of privacy. But like in the common area, we tell them there's a camera in the common area because we just want to make sure we just keep people safe. If someone comes in or something crazy happens or someone leaves the dishes out or whatever. And then, of course, cameras on the front, cameras on the back, and just we have that access. We also do keyless entry door locks on all of their rooms. We do keyless entry door locks, obviously on the front and the exterior entrance. And we do Wi-Fi enabled so we can like give people certain codes. We can rechange the codes if we need to after someone moves out. I mean, you just need to be able to keep that as clean as humanly possible, right? And then safe, the biggest way you keep a co-living home safe, you vet the tenants super well, just like you would for anything you rent. But we do a couple of extra steps. We do an in-person showing. We kind of do more of an interview, kind of get a feel for them if they're a good fit for this. We like to see that they've lived in a shared housing arrangement before. This isn't their first time. And then, before we approve them, we vet them really well. And we have a whole vetting system that we use, send them this little video, but ultimately it looks a lot like someone moving into one of your single family homes. I mean, it's like, I'm doing a background check. I'm doing a credit check. I'm doing an eviction check. I'm having an interview with them. I'm going to meet them in person at the property where my showing agent is. We're going to really do that vibe check to make sure this is a good fit for this person.
Super helpful.
So yeah, clean, quiet, safe. You do those 3 things, you can scale this model. One of those things starts to get messed up. You got to, in all of our agreements, it's written that we can kick someone out, if they're breaking either clean, quiet, or safe. So we have to protect the culture of that home.
No, you have to. This is very interesting. I'm seeing this as like it's just in a middle of the road type from a long-term rental to a short-term rental. It's so interesting.
That's
just
right.
Some of them parallel, a lot of the stuff from short-term rentals parallel into this too, especially with the design. One last thing I want to touch on too is like deal analysis, because that's what people are thinking about, right? They're like they're intrigued now. How do you go and underwrite a deal like this to figure out like, okay, let's just say you're talking to someone that's looking at a property for the long term. We know most people in our audience understand how to analyze those type of deals. Is it similar? How do you know like what type of property to look at to maybe knock down some walls, to add some rooms, and just things like that? Floor plan 101 would be great.
Yeah. If there was one thing I could share that people could walk away and know how to evaluate a co-living deal, it would be this. We don't care how many bedrooms the home is listed for. We don't care how many bathrooms even technically the home is listed for, even though we will look at that. We care about one big thing, and that is square footage. How big is the home? And no HOA, right? We're not trying to get into any fights with an HOA that comes down and makes it difficult for this model to operate. So no HOA in a B neighborhood, in a neighborhood where this fits. Like it can't, like if you have some extra cars in the parking lot in the along the street or in that can't be a sore thumb in the neighborhoods. You're not looking for you're not looking for super nice neighborhoods. It's got to fit, right? When I drive into a neighborhood and I see someone's grass is a little long and looks like been that way for a week or two, I'm like, all right, like it's a B- neighborhood, right? B- B+ neighborhood. So what ends up happening is I look for 2,000 square feet is going to mean that I can get 6 bedrooms in that home. Just that's the model. That's the model. Maybe more. Every 250 square feet you add on to that. So say it's 2,250 or it's 2,500. You're going to add an additional room. So if you show me a 2,250 square foot home, 7 rooms minimum. I don't even have to look at the floor plan. I guarantee you I can get 7 rooms in there somehow. If you show me a 2,500 square foot home, I guarantee you I can get 8 rooms in there somehow. 2,750, 9, 3,000, 10, blah, 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 blah. Right. And those are kind of the minimums. You could get more sometimes, but that's the minimum you could get if you really maximize the space. And then it just becomes, everybody gets to play engineer. You get a floor plan. There's an app out there. There's a free app you can use called Cubicasa. You walk through with your camera and it spits out the most amazing floor plan. How it does it, I don't even know how it does it, but it does. And you play engineer. You're like, what if this was this? And we always keep a common area for people to connect in.
That's a little golden nugget there, Cubicasa, because I think people get overwhelmed. They're like, this sounds amazing, but like, how do I actually let's say they have no creative bone in their body, right? They're just good with the numbers. So it's like, all right, how am I going to run this thing? And then I'd imagine hire an architect or something like that to actually build it out if you want to. But this is great, man. Super helpful. I think it's just intriguing. We have another friend, really good friend of ours, who you know as well. He's out in Arizona now, but he does co-living. He does it more on like the entrepreneurial side. He packs houses with entrepreneurs. Growth House. Jesse's amazing. So I won't hide the name yet. If you don't follow Growth House and Jesse, go follow him. He's awesome. But it's just so cool. There's so many ways to cut this thing. And I originally thought, hey, this is only for student rentals. Like this is just going to be just like the college situation, pack everybody in a room. But it's clear that there's a housing shortage in the States today. And this is great for right now. And, it seems like laws are kind of playing in your favor as this thing grows. I don't think we're going to be able to build as many homes as we need for the population that just keeps growing. Right. So you found a niche, man. Riches are in the niches, as they say. And I think you're onto something. This is really cool. So.
I think when you look, I'll say one thing to that real fast, Cora, is when you look at the bet that you have to place is where will we be in 5 years from now? Will labor be more expensive to build these houses? Will prices increase? And if so, then we're just going to have this widening gap of, rich and poor. And it's unfortunate. And I don't think it's the original American dream, but I do think we need to come up with solutions so that people can still live in a safe, clean, affordable home that has a little bit of community, which is really the real mission. So I do believe it's the wave of the future. I believe people in other continents have lived like this for decades. South America, this is not Europe. Europe's very wealthy, right? It's a lot of wealthy countries. Some guy called me from Europe. He called me from Berlin, Germany, and he said, Sam, the room is the new apartment here. And I thought, okay, that's not where America is yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Totally. Yeah, man. The couple, like really last question for me, if somebody was looking to get into the co-living space or grow their portfolio, get 1, 2, 3, because it sounds like in this scenario, dude, you could have 3 or 4 of these properties and make a ton of cash flow. What would the number one thing be that they should start doing, or steps maybe that they should start doing to get in the game? Is it immediately locating properties? Is it trying to create some sort of form of analysis? Like, what is the number one thing that people can do if they were looking to start?
They need to learn the operations of the game. And I know that that's not maybe what people want to hear, because they're like, well, I want to be passive completely and I want to be hands off. But they need to learn the operations, because even if you hire a manager, you need to be able to know some of the nuances of the game to be able to look over their shoulder correctly. Finding properties and evaluating deals, frankly, is not crazy hard. In almost any market, I can find you a great cash flowing deal. I can find you a great cash flowing deal in San Diego, dude, with this model. Like, still a little harder, but like number one, I think San Diego is like 1 or 2 most expensive markets in the United States right now, right? So it's like, we can find deals, but you need to know how to operate them. And if you don't know how to operate them, or you can't find a good partner to operate them, or a good management company, as you asked earlier, Ryan, then maybe this game isn't for you. And I'm not saying that to try to talk anybody out of it. I'm just saying you got to crack that code. You got to figure out what your plan is. This is so important that when I created the journey map that all of our students go through, I thought, okay, which comes first? Finding their market, like finding what market they want to invest in, or finding who's going to manage? And I thought, finding who they're going to manage, because you can find me the best deal. And if you have 0 to manage it and you don't want to manage it yourself, then you can't invest in that market. You got to go to a market where someone can operate this thing, because there's nothing worse than a co-living home that no one wants to operate and no one can operate. So and I wish I didn't have to say this on the podcast. I wish there was managers in every city. And I think in 2 years and 3 years, there will be. But right now, you're in an emerging asset class. And the people who get in now, I believe, will become very wealthy, because there will be more bigger money getting into the space. But the price you pay for that is you got to navigate a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. I think going back, this is it's a nice, interesting theme, and it parlays back to you in the beginning. A lot of people just want the end result, and no one's willing to read that 28-page instruction manual on how to run the karate studio. Just saying.
That's nice.
And so
it's a good tie-in. good tie-in.
I get you like that. So I will
Yeah,
say a lot of people try to skip and they want to pay for the shortcut. But what we've learned is like, you really have to go through it, put your training wheels on and just get dirty for a while. Right. And then you can go and scale. And then you can go the 3 pillars that you mentioned, right? Then you can finally get someone else to help you run the show. But there's no escaping that middle ground. If you try to, it's just going to cost you the time, energy, and effort to go back and redo it. And so that's what we've learned over time. I have 2 more for you as we wrap the show. I know we're kind of short on time here, but I want to talk back to your first deal. And Corey and I talk about this all the time. The thing that really changed the game for us and changed our lives was our first deal that we ever did. And they talk about the power of one all the time. So can you talk to us about the impact your first deal had on you and how it allowed you to kind of just frame your mind and go through the motions to be prepared to get where you are today?
Yeah, everybody, and to tack onto that, everybody said like real estate's very forgiving, even if that first one is not the perfect one, right? It's forgiving over time. May not be forgiving in the first month, the second month that your HVAC system goes out and you have to pay for it and you're like, what the heck? But like over time, it's very forgiving. So that first deal for me was I lived for free, made a little bit of money, not a lot of money, but I lived for free. So I did away with my biggest, what most people's biggest expense is. And that was just powerful, man. Every dollar I made, I was able to spend on a lifestyle I wanted to, which I was very frugal at that time in my life. So basically I saved and invested for future properties. So like very powerful in the mindset. And then I bought that property, that 3-bedroom, 3-bath condo that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. I bought it for $67,000. I think I sold it for like 110, maybe 5 years later. So it doubled in value. Getting a check for 110, and at that point I was probably 19, 20, 21 or something like that. I mean, like it's a big check for a 22-year-old, 21, 22-year-old. I forget exactly how old I was when I sold it, but boom. Okay. I took that and I bought 3 more properties with it. So that property had babies. And then obviously those 3 properties appreciated and I've sold some of those now. And then so it's like this thing just, man, the earlier you can start. I love that you guys are inspiring people about the power of one, because it's cool to hear everybody up here with hundreds of doors, blah, 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 blah. But like, I just love that. Not a lot of people are talking about that. Like, just go get one.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think about Corey's too. And we talk about this all the time, but for people that are listening, they're thinking back to like, how does this pertain to Ryan and Corey? Like Corey had his first prop. He got his first, right? And I saw him post on Instagram and he had to hit the finger up in the air, the one, like he just got his first one. I'm like, dude, he did it. Holy shit. Like I'm in. Like I DM'd him right away. I was like, dude, you got it? Like, let's talk. And so then the podcast evolved from that. But fast forward, that property, he sold it he made $100,000 profit, dumped it down into the Airbnb he has in Tampa that made $100,000 last year. In 1 year.
Right.
Like we'll talk about cash flow. It's different than that. Maybe like $2 to $3,000 a month, depending on the month. Right. But it's insane. It's getting in the game and playing chess. So I love that. I just wanted to bring it back to that. And the last question to cap the show, just because I like being around like-minded individuals. We talk about network all the time. We talked about the power of one. Can you talk about how the impact of networking has made on you? I'm not phrasing the question the right way. What networking has done for you and paying for coaching and masterminding, has that set you up on a different level? Or do you think you would be exactly where you are today if you just did it alone?
No, obviously, even for my first story about how I bought my school and my martial arts instructor believed in me and pushed me and gave me a whole new perspective. I will be honest, I get into ruts sometimes of thinking I don't need additional mentorship. Like even 6 months ago, I was like, I'm good. Like I've created, like, look at this wealth I've created. Right. And then I got to slap myself and be like, you didn't do it alone. And there's another level. Right. And in order to get to the other level, you got to have someone kind of slap you silly a little bit as a gentle, loving mentor, whether that's you two guys through your coaching program or whatever, but like to be like, hey, you got to get to the next level. And so for me, man, yeah, I mean, it's cliche to say, obviously a lot of people talk about it, but if you're listening to this, someone's listening to this and it's just, there's let me see if I can put it in a quotable. You can pay for mentorship or you can pay for mistakes.
Nice.
And mentorship a lot of times becomes a lot cheaper.
As we evolve,
that might have been a Jesse Ray quote. I hate to shout him out, but I was on a podcast for 2.5 hours with him 2 days ago. And I think he was the one who actually said that.
Who is it? I don't want to skip the name.
Jesse.
Oh,
yeah, Jesse Ray.
Nah, he don't care. No, I'm just kidding. That's, I will say.
I'm stealing it, Jesse. It's my quote now.
I actually might steal it now. We're all friends here. I will say it's
That's
just
right.
super important to talk about this. When you get to a certain level, actually, it doesn't even matter if you're at square one or if you're midway through. Coaching is always going to help you. We've all had coaches growing up. If you played sports, you've had a coach your whole life. You go through college, you go into the real world, and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? And there's just a different game that's being played. Money's coming in. You're making maybe more money than you ever had. You have debt. You have to pay it off. There's a cycle of things, and you don't know what to do. So you start reading the books, listening to the podcasts, synthesizing all this information when everyone has an opinion is so freaking hard. So for us, we've learned you have to pay to play. Doesn't matter what level you're at. And it's finding, if we didn't have mentors or people around us and like-minded individuals, a community and coaching, we would just be doing the same thing, looking left and right at the people at our W-2 jobs, doing the same thing, dumping money into our 401k and retiring at 67 with hopefully maybe $1 million by then, just by sitting and waiting at 45 years. But we've been able to exhibit, all three of us on this call we've cut that time horizon down to mid 30s, and we're pretty damn good compared to where we thought we would have been. So I say that a couple of different things here just to wrap the show. You need to think about your first deal and how it's going to impact your life. It will change your life completely, but you have to buckle down and force yourself to do it. And then B, pay to play. Get in the game, find a mentor that's doing the strategy that you're looking to do and that you really are intrigued about, and go pay that person to help you out. There's reviews out there. You can talk to people that have been in their program. Like, there's ways to vet it out so you don't feel like you're going to get the rug pulled from under you. There's a lot of good people out there, including Sam. So if you are interested in co-living, Sam, I'll allow you to plug your program now. I will say, like, if people want to get in touch, they love the episode, outside of just the program, give us all your credentials and how someone could potentially get in touch and get involved with you.
Yeah, I put out a lot of content on Instagram. So just at Sam Wegert. I think that's how we got connected initially, guys, plus a bunch of mutual friends. But at Sam Wegert, Wegert is Wegert. If someone wants to deep dive specifically into this strategy, it's what I'm all in on. And so you got to go to scaleyourrealestate.com. You can get on the waiting list for every month or so. I do these free 5-day challenges where for an hour a day, I just deep dive. It's completely free. You can come on. You don't have to buy anything. It's not a hard pitch or anything. You can buy like this $27 upgrade if you want, but it's a free event. You come in, you deep dive. I go over how to evaluate deals. I share my screen. I show you my deals. It's pretty powerful session that you can just get on the waiting list for the next one at scaleyourrealestate.com.
Love it. Sam, thank you very much. It was just great hanging with you, but I think you provided a lot of value to our listeners. So selfishly loved it. Gave us a nice hour of your time. So thank you, man. I always love hanging out with you. Brother. And this is a great episode. So thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate you guys. It was an honor.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Wealth Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube at Wealth Juice Official, where we post daily tips, tricks, and document our own journey towards financial freedom.